When I teach mindfulness to young kids, they get really excited when they see this. They call it the breathing ball. So I'm going to walk you through a quick mindfulness breathing exercise. As the ball expands, you're going to breathe in. As the ball contracts, you're going to breathe out. And you can place your hands on your belly, and you're just focusing on your breath and the movement of your belly. All right, here we go. Mindfulness. You've probably heard this trendy buzzword a lot lately. There's not one specific definition for mindfulness, but here's a way you can think about it. Present moment, non-judgmental awareness. And basically what that means is you're focusing in on one thing. You're trying to be in the moment and not push away uncomfortable feelings or sensations, things like pain or anger or sadness. My journey to discovering mindfulness started nearly 4 years ago, and I was diagnosed with a very rare nerve disease called Trigeminal Neuralgia. TN is the abbreviation. It is a nerve disease that causes extreme facial pain. So to understand this pain, think about being at the dentist. So you're sitting in the dentist chair, they're working in your mouth, and they hit a nerve. And it's that lightning bolt, that sensation that you feel throughout your whole body. Can you feel that? Now, magnify that by 10 and imagine that it never goes away. Now add in the feeling of a knife being stabbed into your cheekbone over and over and over. And if you can imagine these things, then you can understand what I deal with every day with trigeminal neuralgia. And the simplest things cause this pain. Triggers like talking, eating, smiling, a breeze on my face, or touching my face. After I was diagnosed, after a few months, I couldn't even speak anymore. I had to write and text everything to my family. And my little kids, who were 3 and 5 at the time, had to just watch me in pain. And it was very difficult for everyone. So when all of this began in 2015, I had no idea how transformative this kind of life-altering pain could be. And I also had no idea how it could actually lead to finding new purpose and meaning in my life. So I want to talk about pain for a minute. It's something that we all experience. And it may be physical, it may be emotional, but the one thing we have in common is the moment we feel pain, we have the same instinct. We want to get rid of it as quickly as possible. So when I first got TN, that's exactly what I started trying to do. And I had a few options: medications and surgeries. So I started on a path of medications, and they cause severe side effects, so that path failed pretty quickly. The next path was surgical options, and in October of 2015, I had my first brain surgery, and that failed. In January of 2016, I had my second brain surgery, and that failed as well. So before I had any pain management techniques, this pain would literally drop me to my knees. And my kids, like I said, 3 and 5 at the time, had to stand by and watch their mom scream in pain. And they were helpless and they were scared. And my husband was picking me up off the floors all the time. This was our routine for years. At the same time, as we were dealing with this new devastating reality of pain and failure, we also kept searching. We were searching all across the country, places like Johns Hopkins and the Mayo Clinic, trying to find someone who would take me on as a patient and help me with my severe case of TN. And finally, I was accepted as a patient at the Mayo Clinic, and I would undergo a surgery that had only been done on about 50 people in the entire world. And in January of 2017, I had my third and fourth brain surgeries. Now, these surgeries were pretty intense. So they ended up removing half my cranium, and they placed a large grid of electrodes on my brain. And then I lay in a hospital bed for 10 days with these wires coming out the back of my head and connected to computers behind me. And the neuro team was trying to find the right pattern of electrode stimulation to help manage the pain. Now, TN is no picnic, but neither is lying in a bed for 10 days with wires coming out of your head. I felt like a living science fiction movie, the Queen of the Borg. And my brother was kind enough to make this photo for me, reminding me that I am not a robot. So eventually they found what they thought was the right pattern to help with pain, and so they placed a final grid of electrodes, they closed me up, they tucked the wires down, they placed a battery in my chest, and then they gave me my very own remote control. So I use this to help control the stimulation levels and help manage the pain. So I guess kind of I am a robot, actually. It does make me very cool to my kids and all of their friends. So technically, these third and fourth brain surgeries were a success, but not in the way that I had hoped. My neuro team had cautioned me that success did not mean zero pain, but deep down, that is what I was hoping for. Because before I had this surgery, my pain on a scale like this from 1 to 10 was almost always at a 10. And now I average 6 to 8. I get some, maybe a couple good days a month, but I average 6 to 8. And with too many triggers or too much activity, that can easily spike up to a 10. So 6 months post-surgery, I was still really struggling to manage pain. And so my doctor said, okay, we are going to refer you to the pain rehab center at the Mayo Clinic. And this is a place where you go and you meet with other chronic pain sufferers, and you all go through this intensive pain rehab course together where you learn pain management skills for living a life in pain. And the idea of this just made me so angry because I had been through all these medications, 4 brain surgeries, and I still had to do more therapy. And I think I was mostly angry because I knew that going there meant that I had to accept this was my life. I had to accept that I was going to have a life of pain. And it started triggering emotions in me from times when I had lost loved ones in my life, and I had to accept that they were never coming back. But in this case, it was me. It was the pre-trigeminal neuralgia me who was never coming back. So before I got TN, I had a big, fun, active life, and I had a career of 17 years that I loved. My little kids and my husband and I loved going out on outdoor adventures, going to baseball games, and I was a runner, and I'd been doing that since I was 11, and it was my passion. And after I was diagnosed with TN, I lost my job, and I lost my ability to do all of those things. With TN, everyday life hurts. It hurts to talk, it hurts to eat, it hurts to interact with people. It hurts a lot to stand up on a red dot and give a talk. But what hurts more is isolation, and that's what I was doing. I was isolating myself from friends and family because it was the easiest way to avoid pain. But it was causing other problems. I was becoming sad and disconnected from the world, and when that happens, it can lead to other serious issues. Trigeminal neuralgia has a very unfortunate nickname. It's called the suicide disease. And the TN community does want to change that, but the fact is it's out there, and honestly, it's not hard to believe why someone would choose killing themselves over dealing with this horrific pain that nobody can take away. And I know this well because I've stood on this cliff many times. And this is not an easy thing to share, but I have had many suicide plans and attempts. And I came to a point where I had to just say, do I want to keep going in spite of the pain, or do I want to give up and lose the opportunity to watch my kids grow? It seems like an easy decision, but it's not, because I get up every day and I face this pain and I have to choose to keep going. So after wrestling with this idea of going to the pain clinic and a lot of pressure from my doctors and my family, I went. And it was a very challenging 3 weeks, but I walked away with life-changing skills and some amazing relationships with other people who suffer the way I do. The 2 skills that I walked away with that were the most meaningful for me were moderation and mindfulness. And moderation for me means dividing my day up in like 30 to 60-minute increments, balancing out my active time with my downtime. So imagine doing that. And that means choosing things like playtime with your kids over a fun hobby for yourself or exercise. You get to choose like one thing. Or simple things like running errands or going to the grocery store. Knowing one grocery store trip will result in at least 2 to 3 hours of rest time and meditation. I have about 50% of the capacity that I once had. Now, mindfulness is the other life-changing skill that I learned, and it does help with this balancing act. So with mindfulness, if you think about it, our minds and our bodies are pulled in so many different directions, and it's really hard to think about focusing in on one thing at a time. But that's where you start. And I started in by focusing on my breath and being in the present moment, similar to what we just did with that breathing exercise. And other skills come along with that. I probably practice that mindful breathing over 30 times a day. And I do guided mindfulness sessions, meditations, 2 to 3 times a day. So repetition definitely helps. But it also helped me to start sharing it. So I got my kids involved, started teaching them and sharing with them. And that led to a really great opportunity in this community where I started teaching mindfulness at my kids' elementary school. And the kids are so open to learning. And I was teaching them these skills, starting with focusing on their breath and how to deal with some of those big feelings that they have. And one little boy in particular, he was having some trouble with anger and outbursts at home, and his mom called me just a few weeks after I'd been doing these teachings and told me that he had started doing something at home. Instead of having a big outburst when he was angry, he started doing this. My body is calm. And he just would do it over and over. And this is something that we learned in class and did together. And it's because he was using his senses and then using his breathing, and he was allowing the feelings to pass and calming himself down. And it's just stories like those that bring so much joy to me and make me realize that I have found purpose and meaning again in my life. Not all of us are going to experience chronic pain, but we're all going to have pain in different ways at different times in our life. And I wish that I had learned these skills much earlier, and that's why I like teaching it to young kids. Because what happens when those kids lose a loved one, or they're being bullied, or they don't get into a school that they want to go to, or Later in life, they have a job and they get fired from it, or they want to start a family and they can't. There's going to be big things that are going to happen. And my hope for all those kids and for all of you is that you embrace mindfulness and learn the skills so that you have them at the times in life when you need them the most. Mindfulness does not take my pain away, but it has helped me regain control of my life, and it helps me manage through the pain and other difficult times. Trigeminal neuralgia took so much away from me. I never thought I would find purpose and meaning again, but this journey has changed me in the most powerful ways. I'm a work in progress. Perfection is not the goal. I keep practicing, I keep trying, I keep sharing. I choose living over dying. I choose to keep finding joy. Every day is a physical struggle, but it's a struggle with purpose, and I choose to live with purpose. Thank you.